What is up, everyone? 2024 really is not the year for Darknet Market admins. So I really wanted to make this video. That's why I'm basically sitting in a parking lot. I was actually out pretty far from my house, but this news had broke. Roach had actually contacted me and let me know that this happened. So I did some additional research, and that's why I'm making this video right now from my car. Then I'll try to edit it real quick on my crappy laptop that I have and try to get it out there as fast as possible for you guys. But today we're talking about I don't want to give too much away. Let's just get into it. So a ton of you know about Empire Market. It was a darknet market that had operated from like February of 2018 to August of 2020, which all in all, it was around for about 2 years and 6 months. It became one of the largest platforms for, what darknet markets are platforms for, and a ton of different services. And they filled a pretty big void that was left by Alphabay and Hansa in the mid-2017s. Empire Market was unique in a couple of different ways. It had a bunch of different categories, like fraud, which we see some places, but not all. Drugs and chemicals, counterfeit items, software, malware. The drugs that were sold are kind of like, all the ones that you typically see, like cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, oxy, all the stuff that kind of takes people's lives. Transactions were conducted in 3 currencies, and that was Bitcoin, LTC, and XMR. Typically with a preference for Monero due to the enhanced privacy functions of it. Some of the security features of the market, they supported PGP, rightfully so, 2FA, and that was obviously, to protect user accounts or two-factor authentication. That are not familiar. It also encouraged the use of tumbling services to obscure cryptocurrency origins, which supposedly, some people like to say makes it harder to trace transactions. I personally hate tumblers, so that's just my 2 cents, though. Everyone's free to do whatever they want. I find tumblers to be an attack vector all of their own, so I don't like them, nor do I advise people use them. In any case, Empire Market abruptly stopped and just disappeared from operations in August of 2020 following a series of really targeted DDoS attacks or distributed denial of service attacks and extortion attempts, so said the admin. Many believe that the administrators executed an exit scam. They basically took off and stole like $30 million in people's funds. And so who actually ran it? Well, Thomas Pavey and Raheem Hamilton had began their illegal activities on Alphabay on or around June 15th of 2016, and they continued doing that till July 5th of 2017, according to the indictment, which is about 1 year and 20 days or so. On there, they had basically opened vendor accounts to sell counterfeit U.S. currency. They made in total about 2,700 sales of counterfeit currency. They did other things too, like they shared techniques on, how to make the currency look more real. They a bunch of different tactics to help sell their product. Basically. They also had multiple orders from a customer that's listed in the indictment in northern Illinois, whoever that person is. After Alphabay's closure, though, they transitioned to creating and operating Empire Market, and they basically scaled up their operations significantly in terms of creating their fake currency. Empire Market wasn't some little nothing darknet market. It involved thousands of vendors and buyers facilitating what they estimated to be 4 million transactions, which were valued at more than $430 million. All right, guys. So I had to actually move because I was recording and my phone basically just totally shut off and was like, I got a warning, and it wouldn't let me record anymore because it was like, oh, the phone's too hot. Can't handle it. So I had to move, and that was fun trying to find a place that actually had shade, considering my location. It was a kind of a difficult task. So basically, Empire Market had stopped operating in August of 2020 following a series of distributed denial of service attacks and extortion attempts, or so they claimed. Many believed that the admins actually executed an exit scam and took off with 30 million in users' funds, which obviously is no small potatoes. Like it's a good amount of money. So I think just like the incognito market admin basically tried to extort everyone and exit scam and be greedy, this guy also got popped. So throughout the law enforcement's investigation, they had ended up seizing 75 million in cryptocurrency, cash, and precious metals, according to a bunch of different sources that are out there. Pavey and Hamilton communicated with customers. Some of the specific evidence that's cited is them paying a vendor bond on Alphabay using virtual currency on June 15th of 2016, and creating product listings advertising that counterfeit U.S. currency. Some of the mistakes they made is like they frequently and traceably communicated with customers both on Alphabay and Empire Market as well. Some of the potential sentences that I think we're going to see in this case is like the indictment against Thomas Pavey and Raheem includes multiple counts, each carrying a pretty significant, potential sentence. A detailed look at these charges and their potential consequences, including possible upward departures, would be like the conspiracy. So looking at their charges, I would say, the first one is conspiracy to distribute controlled substances. And these are heavy, man. They involve significant quantities, like, over a kilogram of heroin, over 5 kilograms of cocaine, and for meth, they're saying, 500 plus grams, all of which are, Schedule 1 or maybe Schedule 2 substances. I think they're Schedule 1, though. And each can lead to 10 plus years of imprisonment. And given the large quantities that are actually involved, these charges typically carry a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years with the potential for life imprisonment if aggravating factors are present, which they absolutely are. If they have any, the ability to cite, involvement of minors or stuff like that. I mean, they could also hit them with the kingpin statutes and give them a life sentence that way, which I think, we might definitely probably see. Computer fraud and access device fraud was another charge. Possession of 15 or more counterfeit unauthorized access devices, which could include things like credit card numbers, account login credentials. Some potential sentences for that could lead to 10 plus years in imprisonment. Factors that could increase the sentence include the sophistication of the fraud, the number of victims, and the amount of financial loss that they ended up experiencing. Sentencing guidelines might recommend upward departures if the offenses involved things like substantial planning, which obviously they did, or if the defendants had a leadership role in the criminal organization, which, I mean, the owners of the site, kind of hard to argue that you're not in a leadership position in that position, right? So counterfeiting and money laundering charges, that it's going to be, the feds really don't like money laundering. So creating and distributing counterfeit U.S. currency and laundering the proceeds of these activities is definitely going to come back and kick them in the face. Because this can basically result in 20 years of imprisonment per count. And the money laundering, they really go wild on because, how dare you, make money and try to hide it. That's basically what we're talking about. That carries up to 20 years imprisonment. upward departures, we'll see some in there. And they usually give departures for money laundering when it's like it involves sophisticated means, or if the amount laundered was exceptionally large. The use of technology to evade detection can also be an aggravating factor that they use for the purposes of sentencing. So, these dudes are probably going to get hit really, really hard. And if we don't see them get hit really hard, there's a reason for everything, right? So the feds are seeking forfeiture of property derived from the illegal activities, which makes sense. They typically take all the property that you got from you doing an illegal thing. If the original assets are inaccessible, substitute properties of equivalent value will be what the feds go for next. So I think some of the actual upward departures that we're going to see here are going to be things like mass marketing, where they are, marketing drugs to, or, a wide array of people because they have them on the possession beef. Leadership role, they both have to be deemed to have a leadership role in the criminal organization. Use of sophisticated means will be another one, and because they use technology basically to evade detection through things like encryption and tunneling services, which obviously it didn't work out too well. And the significant financial loss, and the sheer scale of the transactions being $430 million it's definitely going to play a factor into it. We might see obstruction of justice added in there if they, made any effort to throw off the investigation, or, destroyed evidence, or anything along those lines. The last thing that usually gets added in there is like criminal history, and that's like a force multiplier. So if they find that to be the case, they'll multiply it. It'll be pretty severe in the long run. But all these kind of things, man, add up to, a really, Pavey and Hamilton are going to face pretty substantial amounts of time, including a life sentence, if multiple counts are actually considered, consecutively, and if a significant upward departures are actually applied, which they probably will be based on the severity of all these crimes. Really quick, going through the little amount of documentation that is actually available with this specific case, I would say some of the OPSEC mistakes that I saw right off the top were like their lack of adequate encryption in their communications. They should have kept PGP at all times. Public posts that basically messaged details about their operation, and specifically their counterfeiting operation. They definitely had a failure to sufficiently anonymize their cryptocurrency transactions, thinking that their Tumblr was like some magic bullet. Really stupid. And these cumulative charges could definitely result in life imprisonment, especially considering the scale and the sophistication of these operations and the extensive evidence that apparently Ellie has, gathered. It's definitely a red flag, and hopefully this kind of thing, like I don't want to say I like to see it when Darknet Market admins get busted, but when Darknet Market admins get busted that robbed people, dude, no one's gonna feel bad for you. Obviously, it's not as bad as the incognito market admin, but still, like, no one likes to be robbed, and it's kind of karmatic, I guess you'd say, to see a Darknet Market admin, get hit like this, who stole 30 million from, his users. And it's also interesting that this guy exit scam with 30 million, and apparently they seized 75 million. So I'd really like to know, like, how'd that happen? Did they, what did they invest in afterwards? Was it just like, maybe the money they made in real estate or something? Or like, how did that compound so quickly? I imagine it would be through their, maybe their vendor business. But making, tens of millions of dollars through selling, fake currency is if that's how they did it, that's pretty impressive. But aside from that, the other thing I kind of wanted to point out was that at the end of the day, these guys were busted. What is it, 3-4 years since this market's even existed? It should make you think. Like these guys were done. They were out the game. They'd been out the game for almost a half a decade, right? And they got hit. So stay safe out there, man. And I'm sorry if the quality of this video is less than normal. Like I said, it's not typically my typical recording place. So I thank you guys for having patience. Big time shout out to Roach for breaking this news. That was awesome. And I hope everyone out there is doing well. I hope you guys are doing good. And I will see you all in the next video.